So thank you very much for having me. Can everyone hear me all right in the back? Okay, so I apologize. I have to speak English the whole time, so hopefully you can follow. My Turkish is very bad. It's been difficult to figure out some of the language, but I hope you can follow in English. So yeah, I'm very happy we were able to organize this event. I was told that there's such a strong startup and entrepreneurial community in Turkey, and we've kind of gotten a sense of that, of how technologically advanced this market is from our own user data. We sit in New York and we kind of see, look at our dashboards and our data all the time. And about a year ago, we noticed this kind of like tremendous explosion happening in this part of the world, and we realized at first we thought, well, maybe it's a bug. Like, what is going on? We have no staff on the ground. We have no marketing efforts. We don't have a Turkish language version of Foursquare. But nonetheless, we saw this incredible growth, and as we kept looking into it, we realized it was genuine. It was organic, and Turkey has, in the last year and a half, become one of our most important markets. The Turkish population is obviously very advanced in terms of mobile penetration and smartphone usage, and we see huge adoption of Foursquare. So we're really excited to see this, and we've begun investing more and more effort and time in this market, knowing that it's important for our overall global growth. We've partnered with Public, an agency here in Turkey, to help build our business in Istanbul and throughout Turkey. So we're really trying to spend more time here. So what I wanted to do today, I thought it would be useful and interesting to walk folks through a few things. Let's see if this works. It works. I wanted to talk a little bit about the power of location and how we see location technologies evolving in digital media and smartphone usage overall. I wanted to give a few slides, a little bit of an overview of Foursquare. I think and hope most of you have heard of our company. I think so, because you're here, but I'll give a very brief sort of walkthrough of some of our key products and services. And then at the end, I thought I'd talk a little bit about our experiences building the company. I'm very happy to make it interactive. We'll do a big question and answer session if you'd like at the end. But knowing that I think this audience has a lot of entrepreneurs and startup folks here, I thought it might be interesting to share a few high-level lessons that we've learned as we built Foursquare from a four-person company into a big global company in the last 4 years. Good. So on the right side, just to start off, this is a billboard in Times Square in New York City. We love showing this picture just because it's fun, it's cool. We were able to get a little bit of signage on this billboard through one of our partners and developed a cool little marketing campaign. And this happened, I think, it's actually a while ago, maybe 2011, but it was a big moment for us as a company. Maybe we were 20 people at the time. We felt like we had really arrived, like, wow, we're on a billboard in Times Square. It was only up for a week, but still, it felt pretty cool to be part of this iconic place. So let's talk a little bit about location and smartphones. Okay, so this is often how we think of the world, a big global map. This is actually a Foursquare version of it. The different points of light show density of Foursquare check-ins. This is actually a little bit old, yeah, maybe it's a year or two old, but I think the general trend is the same. You can see that in the areas where there's intense light, that's where we see a lot of check-ins. We sort of bundled a month worth of check-ins into this visualization, and you can see we're quite big in Turkey and Japan and Indonesia, in the big cities in Brazil and the United States. So we kind of love seeing this big global view. But this is one meta way to look at location and maps overall. Here's a closer view. Oh no. Before we go into, here is a closer view. This is Istanbul specifically. And I wanted to show you a video. This is why I wanted internet access. Let's see if it works. Let's see if we get lucky here. I think it looked like it was working.
It's not working now. You have to wait for 15 minutes.
Okay. I'm going to come back to this. Internet is not connected yet. Maybe we'll see it later. But what this is a interactive video, just a minute or two, and it shows Istanbul specifically, as you can tell. And the different dots and movements that you'll see in this 1-minute visualization show all of the check-ins that are happening in Istanbul in a 24-hour period. And it's really cool, it's really powerful. It gives you a sense of the movement that's happening within the city to different types of categories of places, and we'll see how a typical day looks like in Istanbul. And so it's really powerful because it shows the power of not only Foursquare, but any and every mobile phone location service. Gives a sense of how people are interacting with their city and with each other. And there's all sorts of really powerful and exciting ways that we can leverage this data and this information to make a great service for users of Foursquare. Here's a little bit of kind of insights in how we build up our location services that you guys might find interesting. This is an area of San Francisco in California, and the little dots represent different check-ins that are happening on Foursquare. And as you can tell, as you can see, when people are in an actual venue, in an actual building, it's not a trivial problem. It's not trivial to figure out exactly what venue they're in. We get different check-ins that might happen. This might be one specific place, but different people within this building are checking in different places. In a city environment, actually getting accurate GPS signal is quite difficult. It's quite challenging. The signal bounces off of skyscrapers. Sometimes there's a steel wall that might be one side of a building that interferes with the signal. And so we wind up getting like a little bit of a messy signal. And there are a lot of location services that try to look at the lat longs or the GPS signals that you get on the phone, and they can't quite figure out what the patterns are. So one of the things that is special about Foursquare is that we've been able to put actually several years of very sophisticated data analysis into figuring out what these signals mean. And we take these different check-in signals and we make different shapes that conform to different venues and buildings. We have a sense over time that this is the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. We actually learned that this little bubble in the middle is a cafe that's in the middle of the museum on the top floor. So we've learned to distinguish, like within a mall or within a building, what the sub-buildings are. Even though in the real world that's a square, the way the GPS reads it is this kind of funny shape. And so one of the ways that we power our location services is that we get very sophisticated and leverage all of the data that we're collecting. It's about 6 million different check-ins a day. And we take that data and map the world as the phone sees it. And that's really powerful because it gives us a clear view on where people are going. And then, of course, we layer on the actual social signals and your actual friend network onto this map. So we know where the different places are that people go and also where your friends go. Again, this is all sort of background to let you know kind of some of the really interesting data science that goes into Foursquare that we then leverage into really great services, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then, we turn it into maps like this, maps that really have a lot of value. It's not just the names of places, but we're able to detect the types of places people go to. And we work hard to recommend to you the places we think you'd like to go to the most based on where your friends have gone, where you typically like to go, what's popular in general in the community. And it's based on time of day, the weather, your personal history, your friends' history, the community's history. We generate and analyze all of this data signal to come up with a really smart view of the world. Here's another way to express it. Most maps look like this. Actually, most maps look like those paper things used to pull out of your car, right, to help you do a journey. This is a step forward. Google and Yandex and others have built a digital map, but it's kind of a strange thing when you think about it. Like, why should we all use the same map? Why is this relevant for me in the same way that it might be relevant to you? Perhaps I love jazz places and sushi bars and whiskey bars, and maybe you like art museums and shopping. And so, in the old world, this one-size-fits-all map is a little bit bland and flat. And what we're doing at Foursquare is building personalized maps, personal views of the world that are suited just for you to give you the kind of recommendations and advice that makes sense for you. And my version of Foursquare, therefore, looks completely different from your version or your version or your version. This is an example of a screenshot from the app. Here's pictures of my friends. This is Dennis, actually, our CEO. And then these are specific places that Foursquare is recommending to me based, again, on all that data analysis. So what can we learn from all this data? How do we turn it into smart recommendations? Well, here's one way we've played with the data. We published this about a year ago. It was an infographic about the world the world in check-ins. And here's a deep dive. So, for example, here's a given day. We can track what kind of venues are most popular at different times of the day in each city around the world. This is really interesting. It's a really interesting view of human behavior. It's really interesting to advertisers. It's really interesting to users as we try and give them advice on where to go. And you can see, by the way, that people check into places that are quite varied. It's not just bars. It's not just restaurants. We see a lot of retail check-ins. We see a lot of people checking into their offices. We see a lot of people checking into here's the travel category. That means airports and train stations, arts and entertainment, museums and galleries, parks and outdoor. So it's this really interesting and quite complete view of the world that we get through our data. Here's another way we play with our data. This was just playing with a year of check-in data to movie theaters. And we actually got a sense as big movies were coming out, this is actually a year ago, which movies were popular in real time. So here, a year and a half ago, I think, this is Iron Man 2 came out in America. I think this is just US data. And we saw this spike in cinema check-ins and people telling us that they were going to see Iron Man. And you see that throughout the year. We can kind of tell which weekends were really big in the movie theater. And so, it's just an example of one way we can play with the data and develop really insightful, real-time information. In this case, it's information that's really interesting to anyone who runs a movie theater or movie production companies and studios who might want to advertise to our users. Here's another way we play with the data. We make heat maps. So this is New York City, and we're showing at a particular moment of time which areas are most densely populated. So in real time, measuring popularity by human activity. This is looking at Foursquare check-in history for an individual. I think this is actually, again from Dennis, our CEO. This is 3 check-ins that he did on a particular day. Looking at it in that kind of micro view, it's interesting, but maybe it's just it's a little bit limited. But here's Dennis's check-in history for an entire month, right? So now you start to get a sense that wow, this data is really broad and it's really powerful, and we can look at someone's entire history and recycle it in really useful ways. So indeed, we take an individual's history and we try and generate something really valuable and powerful. So yeah, what does that look like? So on Foursquare, one of the main things that we're trying to do is provide really smart recommendations, discovery services, and local search. And in this example, someone at the top has typed in food. They're looking for nearby food. And what's interesting about this list is that it's, again, personalized. We use all that data we've collected about you and your history and your friends to generate this really smart, targeted list of recommended restaurants. Not only do we generate what we think is an accurate list, but we show which of your friends have been to different places. So it adds a level of social validation, a social proof, that makes me more comfortable with, hey, I definitely want to go to the first one, Kafe Venue 5th. I see that my friends Mark and Joanne, those little pictures, they've been there. And so surfacing that kind of information is a really nice, user-friendly experience to provide real value. So here's an example with food. Here's another search for arts. This one is an Istanbul search, as you can tell. And we're showing in real time how many people have checked in. We show, again, little faces to show that my friend Nina has actually been to this place. And of course, if you click into each recommendation, you get more content, you get photos and tips. So again, think about it as this really rich, personal recommendation service or city discovery experience. So we just looked at food, we just looked at arts. Because Foursquare's data set is so social, we can also do really interesting and unique kind of searches. So far, food and arts, you could go to a guidebook, I suppose, and find some recommendations for those kind of categories. We can do more powerful things. This is a search for recently opened. So this is brand new restaurants. Foursquare gets the venues, the information about places from our users. And because of that crowdsourced nature of our venue database, we're able to figure out which places have most recently opened in real time. So here's an example in Los Angeles where I did a search to find what are the best new places that have opened. And I get this really real-time, up-to-date search. Again, we think this is leveraging our data in a really useful way, and it's not the kind of experience you can typically have with a guidebook or a newspaper. Here's one or two more. In this case, I typed in fireplace. So we collect a lot of information about each place. We ask users to write tips, which are mini reviews, 2 or 3 sentences. Hey, make sure you try the strawberry daiquiri, or a tip might be sit by the window. That's where the sun comes in at 2 o'clock. Or a tip might be make sure you go upstairs. There's a beautiful fireplace. And so we have all this tip content in Foursquare, and we use that information too to drive really smart personal recommendations. So in this case, someone in New York City searches for fireplace, and we get this list of bars and restaurants with fireplaces. That's cool. Like, there's no other, again, guidebook or magazine that you could use to get this kind of funky, colorful, fun type of local search. Here's another one. I searched for outdoor seating. Again, there's not really a directory out there of places with outdoor seating. Here we can leverage Foursquare's data set to provide our users with a list of great bars and restaurants that have patios or tables outside. And this is also New York City. Okay, so that was a series of examples around local search when users proactively type something in to learn what's nearby. Here's another way we leverage our data and deliver location advice and recommendations. We call them radar cards. When you open Foursquare, you usually get 1 or 2 cards at the top. Right now, just for illustration, I showed you 10 of them. But we usually just show 1, and you can kind of leaf through and see 2 or 3 of these pieces. We call them radar cards. And they're little snippets of advice, again, based on real-time location data from the community. So here's 9 or 10 of them. We might show you friends nearby. Sam, Hillary, and Nina, your friends, are nearby. We might show, what's popular in particular days of the week. Oh, you've opened Foursquare on a Wednesday? Well, here's what's popular. Balthazar's Restaurant, Jamba Juice, and Surf NYC. We might show you hot right now, what's trending. Based on real-time check-in data, make sure you go to this place. Newly opened, I talked about that earlier. We might show a great new store or restaurant nearby. Here's another example, suggested from brands that you follow. Time Out Magazine, they're able to have a presence on Foursquare, and if users want to follow them, they get tips and advice and lists from Time Out. We might surface nearby places from lists that you've saved on Foursquare. Or at the bottom, here's a special from a nearby merchant. This is, again, kind of a broad view of the different ways we play with the data and take all this location information to generate what we hope is a really useful consumer service. Okay, because we're in Microsoft today, I thought I should show this guy. Everyone remember who he is? Or maybe you're not old enough. I remember him from 10 years ago. So this is Clippy. He was, I think, kind of an embarrassed mistake from Microsoft. They took him away, but there was a good year period where he was like your host, right? Your concierge for Microsoft Office, and they didn't execute it that well. He would always pop up when you were playing with your computer, and it was kind of annoying. But let's resurface him. We are here in Microsoft enjoying their hospitality. And the thing I like about Clippy is kind of the concept of having a friend on your shoulder who tries to help you figure out what to do, right? So Clippy helped within Microsoft Windows, but imagine a service that helps you navigate the world and find great things. So that's how we see Foursquare. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make Foursquare useful not just when you remember it, not just when you think about taking it out of your pocket and opening it and doing a search, but even when you forget about it, when your phone is in your pocket. We're trying to figure out ways where Foursquare can kind of buzz you, send you a notification, send you a ping, send you a text message to give you advice on something interesting nearby, just the way Clippy used to help you when you were in Microsoft Windows. There's kind of a buzz phrase for this in the tech press these days, anticipatory computing. It's just starting to become a trend. You may have read about it. There's not a lot of services that are doing this, but everyone is starting to think about it. How do you leverage the sensor in the mobile phone and the fact that everyone has a mini computer in their pocket? Not everyone, but 1.5 billion people around the planet to provide really smart, personalized services on the go. Foursquare thinks about this all the time, and we're really well positioned, we think, to deliver location-specific advice and ideas to people using their phone when they're in an interesting place, maybe when they're out of context, maybe when they've gone to a neighborhood they don't usually go to, maybe when you've landed in Paris for a week vacation and you're not usually in Paris. That's a good time where we can anticipate your potential need for some advice, for some extra advice and guidance. So we've started to think a lot about anticipatory computing and using Foursquare as a tool to deliver proactive information and assistance. So we call this Pilgrim. Pilgrim is an in-house word. It's I don't think we'll use it as a brand, but internally we've developed this technology, like Clippy, to surface useful messages when you're at a place that we think you want some advice. So this is these are two real examples. This is not Foursquare the app, but it's your home screen of your phone, and we send a notification. In this case, since you can't read it, I'll read it out loud. It says, "Welcome to Washington." Maybe you've just gotten off the train in Washington, D.C. Please check out the Washington Post list for fall dining guide for 2013. It has 12 places nearby. So we'll surface this when someone goes to Washington. We'll detect that they're not usually in Washington, so maybe they want some extra help. We have some great content. We have a recommended list of places nearby, and we'll surface it for users on the home screen. Here's another example. It says, "Hey, are you near?" Even I can't read it this close. Trapezuno, that's the name of a place in New York. Your friend Mike says, make sure you try the carne asada super tacos. So here's a tip that my friend Mike has left. Maybe I wouldn't have come across that tip because the phone is in my pocket and I forget to check in. But Foursquare is beginning to surface these tips, these useful pieces of content when you're at a specific location. Here's more examples. Again, we call this Pilgrim. You can think about it as passive geoservices that are triggered by people walking into particular neighborhoods or places. Here's an example where Blake, my friend, says, make sure you walk through the phone booth in the back, and there's a secret bar, a speakeasy in the back. Here's one from J. Crew. Hey, are you at J. Crew? Here's a discount or a deal that we'll offer you if you use your Amex card. Here's a Paris example. Welcome to Paris. Make sure you check out your friend Dave's list of the best 6 places, hidden gems. So these are really great use cases that, again, we're using all the data and the sensors in the phone to surface in the most relevant times. Here's one more example. This is actually a screenshot of a phone. A Little Cupcake Bakery. It's actually near the Foursquare office in New York. When you're nearby, you get this tip. People talk a lot about Oreo cheesecake, banana pudding, and Dreaming Princess, which is a special cupcake that they have that I definitely recommend if you are in Soho in New York.
Are these infos monetized?
I'm sorry?
Those infos that you provide,
how do we
are they monetized?
The question was, how do we monetize this? The answer is we do not yet. This is a new service, and so we're just delivering these pieces of content to deliver value to our users. Within the Foursquare app, we do have advertisements, and that's how we monetize, and I'll show you some examples in a few minutes.
Then what you do with all the information, all the data that you gather, what you do with that, apart from providing information like this?
Yeah, so all the information
back office, that is, as Foursquare, what you do with all the data?
In terms of monetization?
No, just apart from monetization, is there any other tools beyond providing, gathering information like this?
So yeah, the question is about what ways we use our data in Foursquare. So very broadly,
Apart
it's
from providing information to the user.
yeah. Well, it's most of the data analysis we do is to provide services and personal recommendations to users. We also use the data to help target advertising. So we work with our merchant partners to deliver advertising to our users using the data. And well, that's basically it. Those are the two ways that we really focus on.
So how can I trust all the information that you provide over here as a user if you monetize them?
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
If you monetize all the information you give over here, how I can trust that to the information that you provide?
Yeah. Well, so, one of the really nice things about Foursquare is that so much of the signal is based on your friends. So the social signal is a really important part of our recommendations. And so we're not going to sort of give you a recommendation to go to a place just because they, maybe they paid for that. We'll, really drive it based on what your friends have done and where they have been. When we do show advertisements, we make sure that they're labeled as advertisements, so a user can distinguish, oh, well, this is an ad, and I'll treat it as an ad, and this is organic content. And an analogy we sometimes use is the Google search results page. You do a search on Google for flower store, and you'll see a list of recommended flower stores, and you might see one or two advertisements, but because they're labeled, the user knows how to treat them. I wanted to make a couple other points on the data, which is, we really leverage it a lot, of course, within the Foursquare app, but, the future is not just mobile phones, right? New kinds of computing mobile platforms are being developed and rolled out very aggressively. I think we'll see incredibly exciting device proliferation in 2014, 2015. Here's a Pebble Watch. And we've done a small integration with a Pebble Watch where a Foursquare tip or recommendation will surface when you're nearby. So, you can begin to see how powerful this data is, not just within Foursquare, not just within the mobile phone, but in other mobile platforms. And here's another example, Google Glass. There's Sergey with his Google Glass on. And here's an example. Again, we've done a small test integration, and you see a Foursquare tip surfaces in the image, in your view, as you come to nearby this place. It's called the Grey Dog Cafe. So I don't know if Google Glass is going to be popular and something that we're all wearing a year from now. It's a big question, but clearly data and technology is gravitating towards many different wearable technologies. And whichever ones win out, Foursquare hopes to have a presence and help improve. Okay, so let me give a few more details about what we do specifically, and then move towards Q&A. So here's one kind of thought or sentence that tries to capture what we're doing. I've kind of touched on many of the themes over the last few minutes, but I kind of was writing this down once or twice when Dennis, our CEO, was talking about it, and he likes to think to make this statement and think about the future as it's pretty obvious when you step back and you think about it. Like there's 1.5 billion people with mobile phones. One day, everyone is going to be using the software that they have in their pocket, the mobile phones, to give them useful information and advice on when friends are nearby, when great places are around the corner, and whether there's merchants nearby who can help save them money. So, we're trying to be one of the great services that deliver this. Sometimes we think about 3 different types of value that we deliver. The first is for users, local search, personalized local search. We talked a lot about that already. We also have a whole set of services for merchants and advertisers where we can let them have this great ad platform to reach users. And we also have a very open API that thousands of partners use to take Foursquare data and make their services better. So sometimes we call this the location layer of the internet or third parties, for third parties. And we have partners like Instagram and Uber and Flickr and LinkedIn and thousands of other companies, again, use our API, take Foursquare data, and incorporate them into their services. So a few high-level metrics, because it's really interesting to get a sense and a reminder that we're operating on a real global scale. We have over 5 billion check-ins that we've collected over the last 4.5 years. We have 45 million users who have downloaded our service. Our database of places is 65 million. Out of those 65 million, 1.6 million merchants have come onto our website and claimed their venue. That allows them to offer specials and discounts and track and control their venue page on Foursquare. We have over 40 million tips that people have created, and we have 50,000 people who have started to use our API. So it's a really exciting sense of scale that Foursquare has built up. I've talked a lot about the consumer-facing side of it. Let me just show one or two examples of how we monetize and advertisements. So we have this concept called specials. A location can offer a deal or a discount, and then they can promote it using Foursquare ads. The ads appear up here. They very clearly say promoted and are typically in orange or a clear color. Here's a couple of other examples, actually in Turkish. We have an ad unit that we call promoted update, where we will show the ad unit at the top of the screen, where we typically show our radar cards. Here's an example of what we call the post check-in screen. After you've checked in, you sometimes get a screen which has some content and sometimes an ad copy. And this is really powerful and useful to advertisers because we can target the messages so cleanly. So here's just an example of all the different kinds of categories that we can target based on, again, people's real-world mobility patterns. And here's just one more example of recent ad campaigns that Public here in Istanbul has helped us sell into the local market. Different innovative ways that people have used the Foursquare platform to reach their users and their potential customers. Okay, I wanted to talk just one or two slides about the API. I mentioned it earlier. So yeah, we have 50,000 developers using the data. Some very big names are included in that. Quora, Pinterest, Bing and Microsoft, of course, Uber, Waze, Vine, Evernote. Like a really, really nice, rich set of services are using Foursquare to help power location in their services. And the reason is because the Foursquare data set around places is, we think, the most accurate, most up-to-date, most social, and most interesting. So these different services are using us for those kind of things. Okay, so I just have one more slide, and then happy to open it up to Q&A. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the lessons that we've learned as we built Foursquare over the last 4 years. Some of these are obviously very general, applied to us. Maybe they're useful and interesting to you guys as you build your new companies here in Turkey. So the first point I wanted to make is about Twitter. So Twitter, its greatest customer research and communication channel ever. I think one of the kind of secret lessons of Foursquare is how Dennis and Naveen, our two co-founders, were on Twitter from day one, using Foursquare after launching Foursquare, communicating with our users, and constantly giving advice and getting advice and feedback from our users and answering questions. And literally, Dennis and Naveen themselves, the two co-founders, were on Twitter responding to people's questions and comments and criticism about Foursquare for easily 2 or 3 years. They would check every single day. Today, Dennis, as our CEO, is of course super busy. We have a big company. We now have a whole team that does customer service. But even so, Dennis still comes onto Twitter and interacts with people on a personal basis. And it really, I think, again, has been one of the secret reasons, that one of the secret sauces in building the company. It generated so much goodwill among our user base. People were excited and psyched to kind of interact with people actually working at the company. And it provided us with this real-time feedback, like on a daily basis, on which products were working, how Foursquare could be better. So it's the single biggest piece of advice I give to young entrepreneurs. Twitter is your friend. The second point is more about talent in HR. So pitchers never say they're tired. So this is of course more of an American reference. Apologies, but in American baseball, right, the guy on the pitcher's mound, right, the guy who throws the ball is called the pitcher. And if you ever watch a baseball game, you'll see that after about 2 hours, the pitcher always gets tired, and the coach always comes out to the mound, and they have a little conference. And the coach says to the pitcher, hey, should I take you out and replace you with the relief pitcher? And the guy on the mound always says, no, I'm good, I feel great. Because, pitchers are competitive and talented, and they never want to admit, I'm too tired, let's bring the new guy in. Well, it's the same kind of in a startup environment, right? You hire really great people, really energetic people. Everyone, wants the company to win. But after, a certain amount of time, once the company gets to a new phase or a bigger phase, after 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years go by, it's healthy for there to be turnover. And so, as you're building and managing your company, you can't be afraid to occasionally make changes. The third point is one about scale. It's really, really healthy to stay as small as possible for as long as possible. Jeff Bezos of Amazon has this great concept, a 2-pizza team. So I think his argument is that any given team working on a project should never get too big such that 2 pizzas could not serve them. So the idea is, you're working late at night, you and how many people can 2 pizzas serve? 10, 12? Your 12 people are all sitting around the desk working till midnight, you order in pizza. If you need 3 pizzas, that means you have too many people. So that's the idea there. One floor is another concept. There's a lot of startups that we know in San Francisco that they get flooded with venture capital money. They open up 4 stories offices, and once you grow beyond 1 floor where everyone is in the same space, your communication challenges and your alignment challenges become much, much greater. So, whatever metaphor you like, 2 pizzas or 1 floor, the concept is stretch people, stay as small as you can for as long as you can. The next point, pay attention to your eventual customers for day one. In Silicon Valley, it's very fashionable to say, we're building a consumer service, we're not going to worry about money for 5 years, we're only focused on the user. And of course that is true. That has to be your number 1 priority as you build and launch a business and an app or a website. But you can't ignore your eventual customers forever. At Foursquare, we didn't start making money until year 3, year 4, but even in year 1 and year 2, we were thinking about merchants and thinking about services that merchants could use on Foursquare. And for 2 years, we had all sorts of tools that a merchant could use on Foursquare, but for free. And so it wasn't something, we didn't try and make money right away. We didn't need to. We wanted to focus on users. But we were thinking about how to include merchants in our ecosystem, how to give them tools so that they could create specials and discounts and deals for our users. Again, not as a money-generating thing, but as a way to build a relationship and a brand among our eventual customers. And I think that turned out to be wise. Then when we were ready to monetize and build a business, we already had a little bit of momentum. And the last is a simple point too, build HR early. I know a lot of startups in New York and San Francisco that have 90 people, 110 people, 200 people even, and they don't have an HR or talent team or department. And I think that's a mistake. I think we did this right. We hired an HR lead. I think she was our 25th employee. So pretty early on, we brought on an HR lead, someone who could help guide and document and enhance our culture, someone who could institute employee reviews and performance feedback systems, someone who could help us build a career ladder. All these things feel a little bit bureaucratic, maybe a little bit big company, but they're important even early on. So that's another lesson that we learned. Okay, I think that's it for my formal presentation. Let's see if the internet works, maybe. Let's see if it's turned on, because I'll end with that video that I wanted to show you of Istanbul. Let's see. Yeah? You think? Uh-oh. This looks bad. So, oh, thank you. So this is the Istanbul check-in video. It's 24 hours, day in the life of Istanbul. And you'll see that there's different dots that light up that represent different check-ins. And they're different colors, and the colors represent different categories. I think blue is, well, we'll see, but I think blue is workplaces, yellow is bars and restaurants, and you'll see also different lines appearing on the map, and that represents when 2 check-ins have happened from the same person within a short amount of time, so you kind of get the sense that they've checked in one place and then the other. Oh, good. I guess it's working. Hopefully it's working. Thanks. Just hit play on the lower left, please. Thank you. Good. Oh, it's not playing yet. Never do the live internet connection in a presentation, right?
Microsoft has a policy for that. I mean, you can't really connect online. You gotta wait and watch the video on Microsoft, and then.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Good. So yeah, so you really get this like living sense of the city breathing, right? Yeah, yellow is workplaces, green is food, purple is outdoor spaces. And on the upper left, you see the clock ticking, 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m. So now we're turning into the night. Red is residences, people checking into their own homes. Nightlife is also spiking, of course. It gets a little bit quiet. You see the ferry lines very distinctively. That's really cool, right? And the bridges.
Are people checking on plane?
People do check in on planes, yes.
To the airport?
Yeah. And now we're at 10 a.m., we're at the morning commute, right? And we see food growing, I guess breakfasts. We see yellow, which is professional workplaces. So this is just 24 hours, so it's really happening at this really kind of cool scale. And yeah, there we go. Good, so thanks so much. Enjoyed coming by and hope you found it interesting. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are. There are a few, please.
Thank you.
Oh, is there a microphone? Maybe, here we go. Why don't we use that?
Will it be fair to say that because of the nature of the business you are doing, there is some surveillance on the people, and this somehow conflicts with the privacy issues?
So the question was about surveillance and privacy issues. So the worst thing that we could do as a business and as a company is abuse the data that we're collecting on users, and you know that would be like the most self-destructive thing we could do, right? Because if people don't trust us with their data and their information, then they won't use us, right? So we have a very strong motive to do the right thing and not share information when users don't want us to share information. So that's a general comment. As you may know, when you check into Foursquare, it's not like we share your location with everyone. We only share your location with your friends who you've agreed to be friends with. It's not a Twitter model where you follow people, it's a Facebook model, right? Where you have to invite someone, they have to say yes, you both agree, and then you're friends. And so we really make sure that the user has full control over who they share their location with.
So do you have them sign a consent agreement so that they don't have any legal complications?
They do. When a user sign up, they sign a terms of service that covers all of those issues. Yeah. But my general point is that we're very careful about privacy and trust issues. It's the right thing to do, and of course it's in the interest of our company. Please.
Do you plan to use iBeacons to improve like locations by like location analysis by stores and inside malls and inside stores?
Yeah, it's a good question. The answer is maybe. iBeacons are very new. It's a very dynamic market. It's very interesting, like in-store location signals. There's a startup called Shopkeep that's been doing it for a year or two with their own box. Now Apple and PayPal. There's many companies now coming out with little dongles. We're not sure who's going to win, like what will be the standard. So we're kind of waiting and seeing, and then we'll see if there's a partnership opportunity. But right now we're not doing anything, but we're keeping an eye on it. Please.
As a Foursquare user, I frequently use the local ones and in the city. But if I go to another city, then there's a big problem. I don't know the locals, I don't know which profile is there, and then my friends, if they didn't visit the place, then I have a problem finding the place. Is there any profiling solution that you are working on?
Yeah. So yeah, if you go to a new city that none of your friends have been to, we don't have that social signal to help with recommendations. That's true. But instead, we look at what's popular generally. So we might look at just what are in general the best restaurants, the best bars, the best museums, the ones that get the most check-ins, and we'll use that to give you advice. So maybe it's not quite as good, it's not quite as personalized, but it's better than nothing. It's something, and that's the way we handle that problem. Yes.
Just more details about your loyalty programs. What do you have? What do you offer in terms of loyalty? Okay,
the question was about loyalty programs. So one of the things that we offer merchants is the ability to run what we call specials. These are little rewards that a merchant can give someone if they check into their store. And as I mentioned earlier, we actually make these free from not quite day one, but maybe day 30. In the history of the company, we built this idea of specials. And specials are really cool because they can be used as a loyalty program for merchants. A typical special might say, hey, come to my coffee shop 5 times, check in 5 times, and then on the 6th time, you get a free dessert. Or, come to my restaurant 10 times, and if you check in 10 times, you get to cut the line and you get a table right away. Merchants can kind of play with the reward and do really fun and creative things. So that's been very popular with merchants, allowing this kind of loyalty program. Next question. Back there. Sorry, I'm only focusing on the front. I'll get to back people soon. Yes.
Hi. I have 3 very short questions. Number 1, I want to know more about your own story, your personal story.
Okay.
Number 2, how do you define talent? And number 3, when you think about business development options, do you consider to use your application, your technical infrastructure, and take it and to apply it to something totally different, like, for example, to compete with LinkedIn about to check at Foursquare the people rather than places?
Okay, sure. So I didn't do a full introduction. I've been with Foursquare since 2010, so for about 4 years. Prior to Foursquare in New York, I was living in London and worked for a startup called Bebo. It was a social network that was competing with Facebook and MySpace. And prior to that, I worked at a company called Jupiter Research, which is a research and analysis firm about the internet. So I've been in digital technology for 15 plus years, and kind of seen it all, I guess. In terms of talent and what we look for, in a startup environment, I always strongly favor energy and hunger more than experience. Experience is deceiving. You're more often tempted, perhaps, to go with the resume or the person who has 10 years of experience in email marketing. But I would much rather go for a young person who maybe only has 2 years of experience, but really has passion and energy, and wants to prove themselves and make their mark. So that's generally what I strongly favor: hunger over experience at our level. You had asked lastly about other types of check-in models. We've often thought about extending check-ins to other things, and we've always come back to, let's just focus on places. It's a very big problem set. It's very complicated. It's hard to do well. Let's just focus on checking into places. An opportunity that we almost did was checking into TV shows and movies, checking into media. That's kind of it's a closed extension. I'm checking into, my favorite movie and we just backed away from it. It was too complicated. Other questions? Let me take one in the back, if there are. I see some front rows. Anyone in the back? That gentleman? Yes.
I'm more interested in the growth part of Foursquare. Right now it's so big, but I'm wondering how did they actually acquire the first company, first of all, the 3 months?
Yeah.
And how did they acquire the first one, monetize one? So this is, I think, very crucial.
Do you mean users or like advertisers?
The restaurants, etc.
Oh, they're on the merchant side. Okay. Yeah, interesting question. So yeah, the question was about growth. I'll answer on the user side quickly first. Why are we so big in Turkey and have all the such a huge user base? The answer is I don't know. It's very interesting. I showed that map and how we're big in Indonesia and Brazil and Turkey and Italy, and there's something organic that happens in certain countries, and once it starts, it's like an avalanche, right? A lot of people use Foursquare because a lot of people use Foursquare. That's the dynamic we see in Turkey. And it's connected directly to your question about merchants. Once there's a big user population, the merchants start to notice. And our biggest, strongest early salespeople and advocates have been our users. In the US, we saw this a lot with early merchants. Our users would kind of check in a lot, and then they would say to the restaurant owner, hey, I'm the mayor of your place. I've been here more than anyone else on Foursquare. What do I get? Like, they expected a special, a deal or discount. And the restaurant owner would say, what are you talking about? What's Foursquare? And then 2 weeks later, someone would check in and say to the restaurant owner, hey, I just checked in 12 times. What do I get? And the restaurant owner would say, well, what are you talking about? What's Foursquare? And on the third or fourth time, they came to our website or downloaded our app and they learned about Foursquare. So my point is, getting our users passionate and excited about us has been our best marketing tool, to be honest, with merchants.
So in terms
Go
of
ahead.
the response,
Yes.
the sales team, of course, went to the merchant and asked for some, let's say, in terms of the money, like this is the page that we generate, etc. How did we achieve this sales? That's what I'm actually most curious about.
Okay. So as I mentioned, we actually did not start charging for things, collecting money in any way for maybe 2.5 or 3 years. So we had this nice period where we were working with merchants, getting them used to our tools, getting them excited about Foursquare, seeing how they could use Foursquare to connect with their users for a long time before introducing proper ad products. And so my point is that we got them used to the technology, we got them convinced that it was a nice channel for users. So that was like the groundwork. On top of that, we then started to build a sales force and a set of ad products that were very measurable and very targeted. And so we came to them with a very strong value proposition as an advertiser. We began to hire salespeople in New York and San Francisco, and actually go and talk to the merchant. And now here in Turkey, we're working, as I mentioned, with Public to do the same thing. So it's I think it's a mix of educating the market and getting them used to your services, launching ad products that really work, and some human outreach to actually sell the products. Yes, sir.
Have you got a filter system to verify whether the information you got is genuine or not?
The question was about filtering systems to verify whether the information was genuine. We rely on our user base, so our places are crowdsourced. It's almost like Wikipedia. It's like Wikipedia for places. And we have our millions of users around the world telling us what stores have opened, if there are duplicates, or if the address is wrong, or if the store has closed. And we have this kind of really useful real-time channel from users. We don't independently verify it because there's no way to do that. There's no way to do it on a global basis. But we find that the crowdsourcing, in the same way that Wikipedia just turns out to be quite accurate, we find that crowdsourcing is a really powerful tool to manage our venue database. Did you have a question?
Yeah. Thank you, how you get first investment, I wonder, because you run business 3 years without money.
So the question was, yes, how do we get our first investment? So our founder, Dennis Crowley, he had previously founded a company called Dodgeball. Dodgeball was founded in 2002, I think, 2003 maybe, and then he sold it. It was a hot company. It had kind of some buzz, but it was very early. It was before smartphones. It was kind of similar to Foursquare, actually, right? It was a mobile phone social network. It was only 2 or 3 people, like it was very small, and they sold the company to Google. And selling the company to Google kind of created a little bit of buzz, of course, in the tech industry. And so 4 years later, when Dennis started Foursquare, he himself had a little bit of a personal brand. And so it was powerful enough that we were able to raise money very early on. So we raised our first round of capital in September 2009. We raised about $1 million, which was a lot of money, which was and is, of course, a lot of money. So that enabled us to hire a few people. And then, since then, we've actually done 4 subsequent rounds of fundraising. So we've raised it's over $120 million now in 4 rounds. So we have 170 employees. So we're really playing that like classic U.S. venture-backed startup game, for better or for worse. Of course, I know the situation is different in Europe and in Turkey. The ecosystem, the funding is not as extensive. In the U.S., of course, the venture markets are very developed, and for a hot property like us, focused on mobile, we've been able to bring in a lot of capital. Yes, in the tie, please.
Do you have any plan to invest in Turkey? An office maybe?
So the question was, do we have plans to invest in Turkey? So we're not opening our own office here, but we've made a partnership with Public, who has an office here, and they have a big team dedicated just to working on Foursquare. We also have staff in London, and one of our personnel, one of our teammates in London, is actually a Turkish citizen, and she speaks Turkish, so she's helping develop the Turkish market, and even though she lives in London, she's actually here today. Where is she? There she is, Ece. So yes, we're making investments in those ways in the Turkish market. Next question. Yes?
In the beginning, Foursquare was having gamification in that. It's still there, but
Yes.
now you're moving on more about recommendation. And when you go moving, don't get me wrong, it's great, but there are too many competitors out there if you go to the recommendation part. And gamification is kind of the same, so the same, you get the scoreboards and the badges and everything. What would be your strategy to differentiate yourself? First, the other one is, do you have any plans to add more gamification to Foursquare?
Yeah, okay, it's good question, interesting question. So yeah, gaming elements in Foursquare were very important in the early days. What we found is that when a market is just starting out, the gaming elements are really fun and a good onboarding mechanism. It's a way to get users to start using the product. They really have fun. But after a while, it kind of peaks out in some cases. And so we've been trying to really focus on recommendations and discovery, because we do think we have a differentiated ability there, given all the data analysis and the mobile technology I talked about, where you can offer, we think, the best and most personal recommendations. So that's been our strategy, so to really focus on discovery and recommendations. The gaming elements are fun, but again, what we found is that users value the recommendations more over time. You asked about future developments. We have a whole bunch of things we would like to do on the gaming side, and we're constantly kind of playing with and testing things. I don't have any sort of formal announcements, but I'll share one of my personal favorite ideas, and we hopefully will see some version of it in the product this year. Right now, as you know, we have mayors, right? If you check into a place more than anyone else, you're the mayor, and that's fun, and people compete for it. But it's a little bit limiting, right? Only one person can become the mayor, and so we're thinking about expertise among different categories as a new idea around gaming. And so maybe you could imagine a world where, if you went to many different sushi places and you left great tips and a lot of people liked your tips, maybe you could kind of earn some kind of public expert as a sushi person, and it wouldn't just be one person, maybe there could be 50 in Istanbul. So there's something around that idea that we're playing with, but I'm not sure how it will play out. Maybe I'll take 1 or 2 more questions, and then I'll still hang out afterwards, and we can chat informally. But I'll take 2 more questions. Go ahead.
How come you haven't checked
How come you haven't checked?
You may have, if you're in the front row, you saw that I came in late and rushed to fix the computer. So we have something that we jokingly call a late check-in. Like sometimes you leave the restaurant, you're like, oh yeah, I wanted that check-in, and you do it in the taxi ride, so on the way out, so I'll do that.
Actually, this is related. Are you planning to have automatic check-ins? I think you tried to do it.
Yeah, so the question, do we plan to have automatic check-ins? The answer is no. I was talking a lot about passive technology, and everyone kind of thinks that, they ask that question a lot. Hey, when will you do automatic check-ins? We never want to do automatic check-ins. Automatic check-ins are a little bit creepy when you take someone's location and you share it, right? What we want to do is automatic recommendations. So, the way we leverage the passive technology is, as I spoke about, to sort of surprise and delight you with a really relevant tip or piece of advice. No, we don't want to automatically check you in. Yes, sir. Last question.
Are you profitable, and do you plan an IPO?
We are not profitable. We're still in a this connects to the question about venture capital. Like, we're not supposed to be profitable. So I know that sounds funny, but what I mean is, we're still in a very early stage for our company. And when the investor, we just raised, let me say this as an update, you maybe saw it in the press, we just raised a very nice amount of money from Microsoft. They're our new strategic partner. They invested in Foursquare in January. We just announced it 4 weeks ago. And in December, we raised an additional round of capital from two venture capitalists. My point is that as we raise that money, like the strategic feedback and advice we get is don't worry yet about becoming profitable. Invest them. I know that sounds funny, but it's about invest the money, build your team, build your market share, build your services. The reason we raise money is to have the luxury of taking 2 or 3 or 4 years to build a company until we need to be profitable. So, that's of course what Twitter did, it's what Facebook did, it's what every successful startup and internet company does. You can't wait too long, right? Eventually you have to turn the corner and make money, and we have our eye on that. We are trying to build a real business so that we can be self-sustainable. But it's too early now. Right now we're just focused on growing the company and building market share. So thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's attention, and I'll be here if you want to chat.